Enjoy a typical afternoon in New York City.
Who is it?
Groceries, man.
Hey everybody, this is the Canon Cruisers. I'm JD.
And I'm Randy, and this is the Non-Canonical Adventures of JD and Randy. So the basic premise behind this is that every once in a while we're going to want to watch a movie that's not a canon movie, or we want to fill in a gap for a franchise that is part of the canon catalog. So for our inaugural episode of this offshoot, we watched
The original Death Wish, starring Charles Bronson and directed by Michael Winner, which came out in 1974.
Yep.
That's the old classic. But you see, Canon didn't actually make this movie, and we didn't want to skip it, so we decided to make this whole side series just for this.
They only made movies 2 through 4.
Yep, 2, 3, and 4. And 5 was made by the spin-off of Canon Studios, which we will probably get to in another non-canon episode way down the line. But for now, we're talking about the original Death Wish. So, you want to talk the plot now?
Yeah, so it's a very simple plot.
It's a classic plot.
It's a classic plot. Man's wife is brutally murdered. His daughter is sexually assaulted in his home.
And beaten half to death.
Leaving her suffering severe post-traumatic stress disorder. In order to get over his feelings of loss, he resorts to vigilantism.
Yep, vigilantism. What he does is he goes out at night and starts putting himself in deliberately precarious situations in order to tease criminals into attacking him, and he justifiably shoots back.
It's like, so just before we go much further on that, because that's basically the whole plot. We're not going to break down every single thing.
It's one of the most ripped-off movies of all time, so you probably already know
it's
what
like,
it is.
It's like, for you younger people out there, you might recognize this more as the plot of The Punisher.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was going to say is that before we go forward, just so that we have some background here, the characters, like really the only main characters that we care about, and not just saying, oh, we like these characters, but you really have to care about in the movie because everybody kind of falls on the wayside, is Paul Kersey, played by Charles Bronson, and NYPD Lieutenant Frank Ochoa, played by Vincent Gardenia.
Which I believe both show up in the sequel.
That's correct.
Here's a clip from the trailer from way back in the 70s.
My name is Paul Kersey. How's my wife?
I'm sorry. She died a few minutes ago, Mr. Kersey.
Any chance of catching these men?
There's a chance, sure.
Just a chance.
I'd be less than honest if I gave you more hope, Mr. Kersey.
This is Paul Kersey.
And we're back.
So I guess we should get into the impressions, what we thought of the movie.
I'll go first.
You go first this time. Okay.
I enjoyed this film. It never really rubbed me the wrong way. It's like I have a little thing about 70s films, which a lot of people I find have the same problem with a lot of them about pacing. But this movie, well, actually, this might actually be my highlight as well to cannibalize the next section a little bit. But the pace in the movie was very well done.
Yep.
Brisk. If the movie started off like at a breakneck speed and then it slowed down.
Yep. The middle of the movie is slower than the beginning and the end.
Yeah. The crazy thing is that unlike a modern film or like what you're expecting, he goes out and he's killing these muggers in order to come to terms with these things. But he never gets the revenge that he was seeking initially. The ones that killed his wife and basically mentally damaged his daughter.
It's a lot like Batman, because the whole reason Batman goes on his crusade is because his parents were killed by an unknown criminal, which is supposed to represent criminals, villainy. So he has to go and stop all villainy. If you know who kills his parents and he stops them, it ruins the whole point. That's why a lot of people didn't like that reveal in the '89 Batman movie. In Death Wish, the people who killed his wife and hurt his daughter, you never see them again after they commit the initial crime.
And a little bit of trivia here: freak number one, the one that, well, basically
The
sexually
leader.
assaults the leader and sexually assaults his daughter and kills his wife,
Mm-hmm.
was played by a young Jeff Goldblum. I was surprised.
So if you want to know who to blame for all the vigilantism going on in all of fiction since Death Wish, it's Jeff Goldblum's fault.
Yeah, I blame him for a lot of things, but this is neither here nor there. But something really cool about this is that you see in this film, genre-wise, well, you see like the blueprint for the modern action film.
Yep.
But at the same time, it does a bunch of callbacks to the older genres of the westerns.
It's very heavily linked to
and your
westerns.
favorite of the kind of like the pulps at the same time.
Yes, it's a good linking point between
Overall,
the two.
it left a very good impression on me.
Yeah, it was a very good movie. So, if I was going to say highlights, I would actually say and this is going to sound really bad because it's not a very pleasant scene, is the beginning of the movie when it sets up all the horrible stuff that happens later. And it's not because I loved watching the scene, but it's because it sets the tone for the whole movie, as it's very, very disturbing and very gross. And when Paul Kersey ends up killing people later on, and as much as bad as it is, you kind of feel for him at the same time. Because even though he didn't see what happened, when you know what happened, you have more of an incentive to be upset about it than he does. So while he is killing these people just, for his feelings, because he just wants to kill them to get it out there, you're basically thinking, well, these are horrible people who love hurting people, and they have no remorse about doing it. It's an interesting contrast, because the whole movie basically shows both sides of vigilantism. There's a lot of bad to it, there's a lot of good to it, there's a lot of gray area, and while at the end, spoiler obviously, he gets away with it, he doesn't actually get away with it.
Yeah, and at the same time, even himself, if you watch it, it's like he realizes at some point that what he's doing is not
it's not
good.
It's not a good thing.
But I think there's that tacit understanding that he's doing this to fill a hole in himself.
Like the scene where he was painting the apartment. He was deliberately playing loud music, painting it loud colors on purpose, and telling his son-in-law, who was basically wondering what he was doing, that he wanted to forget. And this was the best way to do it, is basically to block it out. And that's what he was doing the whole movie.
So my highlight of the film, it's very hard because it's I might be suffering from the strange Stockholm syndrome of the last few films we've watched. But overall, it's the movie itself has been a highlight. It's a light in the darkness to me that has been the last few films I've seen. But if I have to say, there's a standout scene...
I call it a classic, honestly.
If there's a standout scene... well, really just the very pacing at the end, that final scene, that little bit game of cat and mouse. So just to give you a little bit of a spoiler... Yeah, it's that final scene is my highlight. Yeah. It's to give you some spoiler here, is at the end of the film... The police commissioner and the mayor want him out of the town, but they don't want him arrested. Because as a side effect of his vigilantism, the crime rate has been going down naturally.
Yes, almost by half.
Almost by half. So they don't want him captured. So they tip him off that, hey, you're going to be, you have police observation. Yep. And the final scene is they frisk him, thinking he has the gun. Nope. He walks into his house, and he does this crazy cat and mouse thing of, okay, I'm going to time it here, leave here, go back to the office, get my gun, and just the way everything slots in until the final confrontation with these three no-name muggers, and how that all resolves. That really worked for me. It's like it really, almost the futility of this war on crime. It's it speaks to me in that way. It's that this has been a futile effort, but it also offers a possibility of hope because he leaves at the end.
Yeah, it's because of how good the movie was. I don't really know if I have any lowlights to say. I could say the laxer pacing in the middle would be considered a lowlight, but it got me more into the character and his world. So I don't know if I could really list that honestly.
My lowlight though is more the. It's going to sound wrong to me, but the lack of a resolution to his overall arc. It's just simply get out of town by sunset.
It's like a Western.
It's like a Western, but there's no resolution to his overall arc. It just, the final shot of the film is indicating, oh, he's gotten out of town, he's in a new place, and he's going to fall back into the same patterns again. Because darkness is everywhere.
I kind of saw that as like the end of a Western, because Westerns were a big part of this movie. They deliberately called back to them, in that he basically became a cowboy by the end, because he basically left town and went to the next town, sort of like those old movies.
Yeah, they literally did it in a tongue-in-cheek way, where it's like... Mm-hmm. The lieutenant comes down and says, we want you out of this city. We'll get rid of this gun if you leave here. We'll get rid of your gun and we'll cover up your crimes, whatever. But you're not being arrested, but we want you out of New York. And the tongue-in-cheek, he looks at him and goes, so, you want me out of here by sundown?
Yep.
And they both kind of look at each other and get this weird grin on their faces like, yeah, exactly. I want you out of here by sundown.
I'm going to say one thing, though, to get it out of the way, because it's going to be an elephant in the room for the later movies. This is not the same type of movie as the sequels. The sequels were made in the 80s, and they were made to be action movies. This is more of a proto-action movie, because this is before, like, Dirty Harry really kicked things forward for the genre. This was a lot more of a genre with some action sequences. It's a really good movie, but when we get to those movies, I'm not going to be judging them on the same scale, because they're not the same type of film. So with that said, a score for the movie, I would give it a 5 out of 5, easily.
Not me. I would still only give it a 4. It's like it hasn't completely blown me out of the water, but I can see a lot of the stuff that has been influenced by it, especially all the joking I was making throughout the whole film about Punisher.
Yeah, it's the Punisher.
It's the Punisher.
It's basically the
Coming
Punisher.
soon to Netflix. Brought to you by BIM.
No more Apple references, please.
Oh, I'm gonna die in that hill of Apple references. But yeah, I still only give it a 4. It's like I think it's a classic, but I think it's almost like a flawed. It's like I'm saying, it's like flawed classic. It's like
he's waggling his hand.
It's not perfect. It's not perfect. That's what the issue is.
Okay. Well, I guess that is it for our new spin-off series for the first episode.
Yep. We're just going to be doing these at random. It's like sometimes we may need a break from the drudgery of things like
when we get to a streak of bad movies.
Yeah, or we might. Well, I know one way down in the future is Cannon did Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
But they didn't do the original.
They didn't do the original. So, in order to have the complete vision of the project, we'll watch the first one.
Yeah, that happens several times. And there's also other movies that are in the same vein as Cannon, but they didn't do.
Same vein, same era.
Yeah, basically, we're trying to do movies between the era, unless, of course, the prequel to one of the movies we're doing is before, which we're just going to do them anyway. But either way, we're going to be doing movies in the same style of Cannon, not made by Cannon. That's the short of it.
Or just movies that I haven't seen from the era that are considered quote-unquote classics.
And since we don't really have any sort of plan for this series, we can't really tell you what's going to be coming up next, but there will be something else in this series later.
Relatively soon, from what I've seen of the upcoming thing.
Oh, almost certainly. But
it's like I would almost assume that we might have like one of these once a month at this rate.
We might. Who knows?
Or we might go a period where there's a long period of time without one, but we'll never have two of them back to back. Unless for some reason I'm not looking at anything, they've done a third movie in a series.
It's possible. But with that said, thank you for listening. We were the Cannon Cruisers. I'm JD.
And I'm the non-canonical version of Randy.
And we'll see you next time when we continue to cruise through the Cannon catalog and similar films. Bye.
Goodbye.
Call him a mad vigilante. Call him a hero. Either way, he's always on target.
We want you to get out of New York. Permanently.
Never make a death wish. Because a death wish always comes true.